Greetings, Immortals. I don't really have a concept for this video. This channel is slowly degrading into madness, although to be fair, it wasn't much to begin with. So, I guess, I want to talk about the characters. Because right now we've just been talking about exposition, so I want to start talking about the characters themselves. So, let's see. Which character should I start with? It's either Shadowflame, who is kind of an anti-hero, really. He's the edgiest character that I have in this universe. Well, it depends on. He has the most edgy. He has the edgiest outward appearance. Given that he literally made a deal with the devil. He has a pact with the Infernal that gives him, with a Shade Infernal to be specific, that gives him a variety of abilities that evolve over the course of the story. Whenever you get a pact, you will slowly gain more powers. So, Shadowflame his powers slowly evolve over the course of the story. There's Hot Rod, who has one of my favorite a sort of rags to riches story, but with, superpowers. He starts with the power of just creating sparks, and he is in like a poor family, and obviously his power isn't really that useful. He can just sort of make tiny little sparks. Not really the most useful thing, at least not for being a hero, which requires a rather combat-based ability, and he didn't have that. So he ended up experimenting and trying to find ways to take advantage of his power. And he was in a very poor family, but he was also very smart. And he essentially rigged up a pneumatic system that allowed him to pump flammable gases. I'm just realizing, where the hell did he get them? Magic! I'll probably find that out later. But, he pumped out flammable gases in front of his hands, and then he would ignite them with a spark to create an explosion. And obviously this wasn't a very convenient setup, given that he had a huge tank of flammable gas on his back, with tubes moving to his hands. But after the Alliance essentially saw the potential in him, they ended up, I guess, sponsoring him and giving him enough money to develop a better suit. They knew that, they could probably just get somebody who has his power, or a power that is better than his, but they chose him because of his intellect, and because he knew how to make the suit. And they ended up sponsoring him, and if you didn't know, this is a sci-fi fantasy, so there's some bullshit science, to be entirely honest. Now instead of having a pack on his back, there's science, but pretty much magic that just sort of, I guess, warps the gases to a much smaller region, but it doesn't need to be large, because it just sort of warps in when he uses it, and then it ejects and ignites. I believe it is, obviously, it's a combustible gas, and it has the same density as air, so it doesn't float, it doesn't sink, it just sort of moves whichever direction momentum was pushing it, so it ends up just sort of moving forward. There's also another one of my favorites, because he doesn't have a backstory, he doesn't have much of a backstory, but he's still one of my favorite characters, because he's so over the top, and I love it. His name is Static, and he has a constant electrical field around him. I mean, that's really the extent of his power. He has some slight manipulation over it, and when... I should explain Awakened powers. I'll describe that next video. But essentially, he just has an electrical field that surrounds him. And he will use this, because you can't really use that to attack unless you just, like, run up to somebody and give them a giant hug. So he has weapons that are designed to sort of harness this power. Like his throwing daggers that are designed to sustain an electrical circuit for as long as possible. He can essentially charge those with electricity and then boink and launch them. He has a rapier that he commonly imbues with electricity. Yes, a rapier, and yes, a Georgian era short sword. God. He wears Georgian era apparel too. So that like really frilly clothes that seem like super impractical, and why would anybody ever wear that? Yeah, he wears that while he's beating up people. While he's kicking villains' asses, he wears that. That's super impractical because it's over the top, and I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, so he fights with a rapier. Yeah. His ability, I think, what was it? Oh, so since he has a constant field of electricity around him, that does kind of cause some issues, given that he has to sort of limit it when he's around people and try and hold it in as much as possible, although that doesn't really work, but it works to a degree. So he can't come in contact with anybody. He can't come in contact with any electronics. Can't come in contact with metal or water or anything that somebody else is touching that is also conductive, because the voltage on this electricity is rather high. Enough to damage somebody. So, obviously, he's immune to it. He's immune to electricity, because his body just sort of absorbs it, and his electricity gets stronger for a limited amount of time. So, yeah, he can't come in contact with anybody. He can't come in contact with anything that anybody is touching. He can't come in contact with any electronics, with any metals, with any water, unless he's the only one there. So, when I said he didn't have a backstory, I mean, he doesn't, but also that's kind of depressing, you have to admit. Let's see, I'm trying to list off the heroes first. So what other heroes are there? I don't have my notebook with me right now. I mean, I guess I can just reach over and grab it. I'm not going to do that. Let me turn the light on really quick. I have a notebook that has a page for every single character. Or not every single character. Every single character minus like 3 that I haven't put in yet. So if I just grab all the pages here, because it's a magnetic notebook, so I can just sort of, take the pages out, and, there's quite a bit. So let's see. This might take a bit for me to organize this, because they weren't in there, they were just sort of sitting on the floor. Aha. Wait, no, that's, give me a second. Pro Hero, I already talked about you guys. Beacon. Midas. Dust Devil. Alright, so, let's see. So, this character is not really a prominent character, more of a side character. So I'm not really going to talk about them much, and just more talk about their powers. So, their name's Dust Devil, and they have the wind and fire manipulation and fire conjuration. Because, get it, Dust Devil? Get it? Because of, like, Dust Devil, like the tornado, and then also, like, the fire. Because Devil, like Dust, Wind, Devil, Fire, because Dust Devil. Get it? Get it? Get it? Ah ha 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 ha. Humor. Anyways, so the next character, because again, that's just sort of a side character. Um, so the next character, slightly more prominent, still not all that important, doesn't have much of a backstory, is Midas. And Midas can change matter to any material within the same matter group. So, yeah, let me try and. He can turn anything. He can turn. Obviously, his name's based off of King Midas. He can turn. He could turn anything to gold. He could turn it into sponge. Actually, he couldn't turn it in. I mean, he could turn it into the material sponge is made out of, but it wouldn't have the same sort of fluffiness because, that's caused by the gaps of air in it. Because the shape will always be the same, but he can change the material of it. So he can change a metal sword into a Minecraft diamond sword. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think it was supposed to be a joke. I don't know. It wasn't funny, so I don't think so. I don't know. As long as he has contact, he can control the spread of the changing, but otherwise it just sort of spreads in all directions. But if he maintains contact, he can control the spread of the shifting materials. But yeah, he can only change it into something of the same matter group, so he can turn air into flammable gases or combustible gases. Yes, that has a possible synergy with Hot Rod. Yes, it's a terrible idea, and yes, they have done it before. Um, uh, he could turn water into acid. He could turn water into gasoline. Another terrible synergy. He could turn rocks into diamonds. Anything, as long as it's in the same matter group. And then I don't really have a main character because it's more just about. I don't want it to be like a main character. I want it to just be a story. But if there was one, it would probably be Beacon, who I don't want to bring up much about the backstory because that would honestly have to be its own video. But Beacon, he. Remember how I was saying there was mana that just exists, and humans have the ability to absorb it and release it. They don't really use that much anymore because they have powers, but human souls can. Beacon is a special case, in that his soul developed more like an infernal or celestial soul. He is an anomaly. And he can. His soul, again, developed more like an infernal or celestial soul, giving him the ability to, instead of absorb mana, he can manipulate the mana around him. And remember, on the Prime Realm, mana density is incredibly high. So, he is actually rather powerful. He can just utilize mana in any way possible. And so, if you want a few examples, he can create blasts of mana. Obviously, pretty simple. But any human can do. I mean, not any human can do that. Any human who knows how to use their souls can do that. But he can also simply just constrain the mana around you, which wouldn't really, I mean, it wouldn't stop you because mana isn't physical. However, it is energy, and therefore, if you touched it, you would, get hurt. So you can sort of make a mana prison around you, which wouldn't stop you from moving, but it'd stop you from moving. It'd make you not want to move forward. But I mean, if you don't feel pain or something like that, if you're incredibly durable, then you would obviously still be able to move forward. If you don't feel pain, you'll probably get damaged a lot still. You just, won't notice it, I guess. He can conjure energy weapons out of mana. He can manipulate manipulate mana currents, which leads to a pseudo-telepathy, or not telepathy, telekinesis. Not quite as powerful as kinesis, and more like moving the air, but still able to do it. He can... Let's see, what else can he do? Those were all the examples I gave on the page, but let's see. He can gather mana around his hands or his legs. He can essentially punch and kick, but powerful and magic this time, because he can surround his attacks with mana. He could, instead of having to, shoot a blast, which gives you time to react, he could literally just generate the blast in front of you, because it doesn't have to be near him. He can just manipulate mana around him. Oh, one of the things he does when he fights another character I'll bring up later is he has a sort of signature ability that he uses earlier on when he doesn't know how to fully manipulate mana. And I called it mana stasis. He literally just freezes the mana around him, or in the area, and makes it to where that mana doesn't move anymore. Which, it does, neutralize his own powers, but it neutralizes everybody else's powers too. Because powers rely on mana. It's just powers are sort of like a mana talent, that you're just born with. But, Beacon can just sort of snap his fingers, and the mana in the area won't move, so you won't be able to use your ability. Mana stasis. So he can quite simply just disable powers. Temporarily, obviously, but yeah. You can see that he's rather powerful. And gets more powerful. When he first starts off, he is incredibly weak because it's hard to manipulate mana, and he doesn't know how to do it precisely. But he gets really powerful later on. Now, the person I said he was fighting is Heartbeat, which has a power very similar to Beacon. And, by the way, these characters haven't some of these characters. Beacon hasn't become a, professional hero yet. He's still in the training course, which, I'll go over that in a separate video, because it has a system similar to, a book I read. If any of you know about this book, you are now gods, and I will worship you as such. Renegades. The book Renegades. Let me check for the author, because I don't actually remember, but I have the book over here. Aha. Oh god, stuff fell. Marissa Meyer. Renegades by Marissa Meyer. It has a system much like that. How you would join the Renegades. That's how a system very much like that. So, Beacon ended up having to fight Heartbeat to be able to join the training course. And obviously Beacon won, given that he's in the training course. Probably shouldn't have said that, but he does. And Heartbeat, first of all, he's kind of over the top. Not as over the top as Static, but he is kind of over the top, and also very serious at times. he likes showing off. He... Okay, so, he can convert energy into kinetic blasts. So, this includes mana, but he can only access small amounts of mana at a time, so it ends up with sort of blast like Cuphead. Just like sort of... not very powerful, but still enough to, just sort of pea-shooter blasts. This includes, like, electricity, other more electricity. I don't know. What's another kind of energy that isn't, like, heat. He can turn heat into kinetic blasts. He could just, like, oh my god, he can refrigerate his food. You have the ability to fight crime, but more importantly, you can refrigerate food. Oh my god. God, I feel like I'm just like a walking shitpost. But this also includes another type of energy, his literal soul, his life force. But when he draws upon this, obviously there's going to be problems. It is his, like, most powerful attack, because, obviously just drawing on his life force creates these huge blasts of energy. And, what was I going to say? He creates these huge blasts of energy, but it does damage him, and cuts start to open up. By the way, there's a lot of inspiration sources here. So this one's a lot like, if you've ever read Room of Swords. I actually haven't read it in a long time. Room of Swords is a webtoon. It's great. I haven't caught up to date with it, but I need to, because it is so good. I recommend you read it, but the main character, essentially, he's a spellcaster. And when he uses his abilities, obviously you have to draw upon mana, blah, 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 blah. But when he ran out of it, he could keep using it by drawing upon life force again. And it opened up, like, cuts in himself. Heartbeat can do something pretty much like that. And it'll start opening up cuts. It's deep cuts. It leaves scars. If he uses it too much, obviously he will die. So he makes sure to limit it. So he can create these huge blasts of energy, but it starts ripping him apart and cutting him open. Starts bleeding like fucking crazy. But yeah. Oh yeah, and he always wears a tank top even when he's fighting crime. Yes, he always wears a tank top and just, like, sweatpants, maybe jeans if he's feeling fancy. Mainly the tank top so that he can show off all of his scars. Because again, he likes showing off, and he's super ripped. Super, super ripped. So yeah. I think that's all I'm going to go over for today. I think I'll go over the villains tomorrow. Or villains. Yeah, the villains tomorrow. Then I'll go over the morally ambiguous. Or not, maybe not tomorrow. Next video. I don't know when I'm going to do the next video. Just depends on when I want to do it. I'm not a big YouTuber yet, so I don't have to have a consistent schedule. Fuck yeah. So yeah, I'll go over the villains next video, and then I'll go over the morally ambiguous characters. By the way, I don't have much effort in me right now, so sorry for the lack of visuals.